So I'm just going to drop a quick link in about it's an older flyer we haven't updated since before COVID about practitioner research. If it's new to you, it's an opportunity to grow the field with authentic research on how our adults are learning math instead of taking K-12 information and always trying to adjust it to us. We're just trying to support our instructors to do this in the classroom and share back what they're learning. And so this year, our practitioner research was done by Shelley Leduc, and I would love for her to share that with you.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? Oh, perfect. I've been having trouble with my mic. Okay. Can you put the slides up, please? Before we get started, I'm Shelley Leduc. I work for EastCon in Connecticut. And I've done a little research. I was convinced by the team to go through with it. And if you could, into the chat, I'm just wondering how many of you are actually classroom teachers currently. So if you could put into the chat either a T, if you're currently a teacher, even in a small part of your time, or put the job title that you have. That way I know what's happening. Very good. Okay. I'll continue to keep an eye on those. Also, if anybody has any questions, please throw those into the chat as well while we're going along. And can somebody, the slides up that I shared? Thank you. Very good. So a lot of teachers and then more PD people, so that's good. Thank you very much. Can other people see the slides? Because I still see Eric has started. Oh, here we go. Okay, perfect.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Is it working?
Okay.
I'm having an issue right now. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Yep. Nope. I can see it now. That's good.
Okay.
Thank you. And my chat has. Okay, I think I can see the screen and my chat. Okay, so the question that I had was when I was doing my research was, can spatial reasoning skills improve when you're studying them in an online environment? So if you could go to the next slide. And here is my spoiler alert. There's a rectangle on the screen. Can other people see that, like blocking the slide? Yeah.
I think Eric,
I can see it.
Yeah, there it went away. Perfect.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please.
Forgive me, my computer is giving me issues right now.
That's okay.
Shelley,
if you want to share, allow me to share
your
and I
screen?
can share. Sure. Give me a second. Isn't it great that we had COVID and now we all know how to do this? Only the second part is real. Okay, can everybody see my screen? Okay, so here is the question. Here is the spoiler alert. We can absolutely study spatial reasoning in an online environment. And so a couple of things that I'm going to just talk about today. Before I do that, I want to find my chat again because my chat is off the screen. If somebody could just yell if there's a question in the chat, that would be really super. Okay, so two things I want to talk about: why teach spatial reasoning, and then how do you teach spatial reasoning. And just starting with the big picture here about why teach spatial reasoning. And I'm actually going to stop my share right now real quick because I did not share my sound. I wish that was a default that you could turn on. go. All right, so here you can see real quick, this is 100% related to spatial reasoning with adults. If you want to look at the title up here, this is BYU Origami in Space, and they're talking about solar arrays. So this is just maybe like 40 seconds or so, or 50 seconds of a video that is, I'm not going to show the whole video, but I just want you to have an idea from the really, really universal size, big picture, universe size, big picture of why we're doing this.
Environments like the environment of space.
Origami helps inspire new ways of looking at how mechanisms can work or how we can approach solutions to problems.
It's very expensive, very difficult to get things into space. And the nice thing with a lot of origami is you can make it very compact for launch, and then as you get into space, you can deploy and be very large.
I'm working on an origami-inspired deployable solar array for spacecraft. The panel hanging behind me is the 20th scale prototype of this 25-meter array system. By using origami principles, we can get a much larger array into space by stowing it compactly during launch and then opening it up once we're in space.
So that is where I start with my class, talking about spatial reasoning. And here, these are the 16 career pathways. You may recognize them. And what I want you to do right now real quick is just into the chat, if you could, if I can find it. If you want to choose one of these that you think is not as related to spatial reasoning, maybe as the others, are not really associated with spatial reasoning. So pick one of the 16. As I said, maybe finance. Maybe you think that's not, you know, it's not like manufacturing. So choose one that you think is not necessarily related with spatial reasoning, put it into the chat with kind of an idea of how spatial reasoning might actually be related to that career path. And Rebecca, I see your note, thank you. Okay, so we have distribution, packing containers in centers, marketing, products on the shelves, definitely spatial reasoning. What else do you think? Big parties, graphic design, paying for space, that's a huge one. Yep, business management, you wouldn't necessarily think it would be so related. Continue to fill those in. Finance and gold bars, that's a really good for finance, I was thinking of a bell curve graph or some kind of graph. What does this mean? This is two-dimensional information that's representing a real thing that's how big were the piles of money, smart buildings. Okay, so you guys are right on top of this, as I knew. Go ahead and continue to put those into the chat. So we're going to go to the next slide here. Oh, back. Student work. So let me just give you a little bit of background, and hopefully you are all going to read the research and you'll see the whole story. But I was, EastCon in Connecticut was paid to create a remediation class for a manufacturing pipeline that we have here that's started by Electric, and they make submarines for the government. So Electric Boat needed a lot of people working for them. They set up all this training, and they needed a way to onboard them to the free training that was provided. So people had to take a test. If they didn't do so well on the test, they had a remediation class that they had to do, and that's where I come in. I wrote that class on behalf of EastCon for the state of Connecticut for the pipeline. And they're studying three things: ruler reading, which seems kind of easy and everybody does pretty well on, spatial reasoning, as we know, which is this, and then shop math, which is basically basic math operations, but looking at a blueprint. So how long is this part, etc. So the students were students who had not gotten the required score on the onboarding test for the remediation, excuse me, for the pipeline. So they were all adults, and these are some of the pictures of their work that they did during the class. And this is, photographs of student work. So geometric transformations is part of spatial reasoning. Composite figures is part of spatial reasoning. Making the jump from 2D to 3D, that's a really big part of spatial reasoning, especially studying spatial reasoning. So these are some examples of things that I ask students to do to show me something in 2D and then 3D. Does someone have a question? I heard a mic. Just gonna check. Okay, perfect. All right. Here is another one, and let's stop just briefly and look at this one. So the words are small and a little bit blurry, but this says which solid shape can be made from the net. So there was a net here, which is the drawing of the 6-sided figure that's before you fold it up and glue it together. And this student has actually cut it out as I asked them to, colored these forms. So here we have an actual 2-dimensional photograph of a 3-dimensional figure, a 3-dimensional model. Which of these could be a drawing of this? Thank you, Rebecca. Anybody know? This is just a photograph of the model that the student made. Which of these could it be? Maybe the top one with the green top? Any of them? Bottom right? No? Oops, sorry. Thinking of color, then one that has a purple top. This one is the one that has the purple top. Bottom left. Okay, so this is one of the things that we go over in the class. And actually, the people that said it could be any of them, those people are right, because we can only see 3 of these sides. We can only see 3 of these sides. So any of these could be the reverse picture of this 3D model. If you had this 3D model in your hand, though, you would see that the one that the student has made is this bottom right one right here. We can see the purple, we can see the orange, and one of these 2 backsides would be blue. So this is one of the things that we do, that I did in this class. Any other? There's so many faces we can't see. So yeah. So oops. Any other comments about this right here? All right. Go ahead and keep them coming in the chat. This was an optional assignment right here, and I think this one is my favorite picture, actually, about the research that I did. And one of the things that I really like, I'm not great with spatial reasoning, and so I didn't know when they asked me to teach spatial reasoning. I didn't know how to teach spatial reasoning, but there are so many different resources that I found in this. In the research that I did to prepare for the class. This picture is probably my favorite one right here. Everybody does spatial reasoning. Maybe you're not paying attention, or maybe you're not, or maybe people aren't paying attention or aren't sure what spatial reasoning is. But this right here was a picture. I just had a student take a picture of spatial reasoning that you do in your own house every day. And then this is what I got. And of course, this is, the description of somebody who's not sure about spatial reasoning. This is not how you would put these 2 items in a bag. That's not how you would arrange them. So, this one of the fun things about teaching spatial reasoning is that it's everywhere and people are better at it than they think they are. So that's a really, really good thing for homework like that. And I'm just gonna look at the chat again. Yes. And the other picture, this is a spatial reasoning related shop math question. So we do all the three topics at the same time: ruler reading, shop math, and spatial reasoning. And there's no sense in talking about length. See, this person's spelling is not their forte. Length, width, and height. There's no sense in talking about those three things if the person has no spatial reasoning sense and can't picture in their head that this is a three-dimensional object that's being represented two-dimensionally. So the spatial reasoning that I taught was really fun and interesting. I have a video here. It's 3:19. I was told I have till 3:25, and this is a 3-minute video, so I am going to show this. This is really, I showed this to my class. I think this is really super. She talks about women here, that women are underrepresented in the sciences and math, and we could really expand women to socioeconomic people that are at lower levels, people of color who don't have access to these materials, these toys, the economic advantages that other people do. I'm just going to play this and let this speak for me for the last minutes.
I'm Cheryl Sorby. I'm a professor of engineering education at the University of Cincinnati. I started my engineering studies many years ago. I was a straight A student in high school, and when I got into engineering and took my very first engineering course, it was the first time I had struggled with an academic subject before, and I nearly left engineering as a result. 3D spatial skills are important to success in STEM fields, in particular in engineering and mathematics. My problem was that I had poor 3D spatial visualization skills. The most underutilized natural resource in the world is women. Women are much more likely to have underdeveloped spatial skills compared to men. We believe that this is part of the puzzle in why we have such underrepresentation of women in STEM. This is what I've been working on for the past 27 years. One of the important aspects in developing your 3D spatial skills is in sketching with handheld objects. I developed a course in course materials. We offered a course to first-year engineering students, and we found that the course helped them to improve their 3D spatial skills. They also got better grades in most of their STEM subjects. The graduation rate for women with weak spatial skills was about 47%. For the women who initially had weak spatial skills, who went through the spatial skills training, their graduation rate was about 77%. We've also done studies with the materials at the 7th grade level. We found that the spatial skills training had a positive impact on the performance of girls on their standardized math tests in 8th grade. We're in the process now of conducting a large randomized control trial study across the country. We have schools participating. Many teachers struggle with their spatial skills, and so they're not as confident teaching it the first time. When the teachers were teaching the curriculum for the second time, then we did start to see significant gains in spatial skills. In the first bar, we see a baseline year where they weren't doing any spatial skills instruction, and then the next 2 bars show the gains the first time they taught the curriculum and the second time they taught the curriculum. Spatial skills can be developed. Just because women might start out with weaker spatial skills, it doesn't mean that forever they're going to have weaker spatial skills. We think it's something that should be specifically taught and developed in our young students, but in particular in our girls.
That was Cheryl Sorby. I really love that video. It demonstrates a lot of the that I do that I did in the class that contributed to the development of my students' online, my students' spatial reasoning skills. To close up, I said I was going to talk about two things: why teach spatial reasoning and how to teach it. I think I taught you why if you didn't already know, which was probably likely, and read my paper is how you're going to learn how to teach spatial reasoning, because you'll be able to see what I did, more background and more information. I always think that the why is in situations like this. The how you can kind of get to, but the why is what always grabs me. So if you read my paper, you'll see the how. Read a little bit more about Cheryl. There's tons of resources in there, references and such.
Just a quick question from the chat
Yep.
for you, Shelley. Are the links to the video and stuff, they're all in your paper, correct?
Yep.
I believe so. I just didn't want to say something without confirming. Okay.
Yep. And this right here, this was kind of the end of the paper. Spatial reasoning skills. I'm going to hide my faces. Spatial reasoning skills are integral to success in math. Math can be a stepping stone to success and financial independence, as we all know. Having a good handle on spatial reasoning is relevant to all people, and not just women, but the other groups that I mentioned, especially right now, and especially in the US.
Just a huge thank you for all your research. It's already in the math practitioner, but so everyone who hasn't gotten a chance to read it yet, that's where it is. And thanks again. I found it very fascinating. It was great to think about as we were designing our fall classes and thinking about how to reach those students who can fall behind.
Excellent. Thank you.
If you are wondering where you're, if you haven't gotten the newsletter, it should have been emailed out to you, but you can also link to it or get to the link on our ANN homepage. If you scroll down, you'll see the math practitioner, and there's a direct link to Shelley's research.
Where do you get the paper where the women were drawing? They had the object and they were drawing, there were dots.
That's
What
isometric
are
graph
those
paper.
dots?
It's
Those is what?
isometric graph paper. You can, if you're belong to NCTM, they have actually an interactive isometric graph paper. There's a whole, EastCon actually paid for me to have a membership to NCTM so I could get to that resource. But you can draw with the lines, you can put into the interactive desktop area, you can manipulate the, but if you just Google isometric graph, you'll also that way. Get it with the dots, you can get it with the lines, grids on there too.
So why do they think that women don't have spatial reasoning skills? Is it because they don't go out in the world? They have to stay in the home. Most all over the world, they have to stay in the home to cook.
It's not even just in the home. I mean, who do you buy Legos for? Mostly boys. You know, Legos, they've figured out with the elf things and the friends things, they figured out that girls want these things too. Who do you ask to help work on your car? Boys. Who gets erector sets?
Also, this doesn't have anything to do with the world then. This has to do with the United States or Western countries, because in all over the world, it's men who get to go out and scout, and they have to have a sense of direction. And whereas women, they go get the water from the well, they just keep doing the same thing. And I just was wondering where this person came up with these facts.
Well, it's definitely not biology. I mean, we know it's not biology. It's the experiences that are given to, you know, without going down too much of a road, that, you know, little boys from families with a lot of money get more opportunities like this, where these things are we're able to examine these things, than girls, people of color, people of lower socioeconomic status. Just what we're exposing them to, and we can fix that through education.
I was wondering, what is the overlap between geometry and spatial reasoning, and are they the same thing or just a different name, or does geometry refer to some more formal thing, or is spatial reasoning the applied geometry? Like, what is the, I don't know. I'm not saying my question very well, but I hope you get it.
I understand your question. I'm going to defer because that's not an area of my expertise. Spatial reasoning, spatial awareness is the ability to manipulate a three-dimensional object in your head, either to manipulate it or to articulate it, open it, close it, turn it. To the degree that that crosses over with geometry, that would be the answer.
Actually, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Good. You're welcome.
When you say it's the ability to manipulate a 3D object in your head, but they were asking the women to look at a 3D object and turn it into a 2D object.
Right, and that whole process, there's I think it's ELPSA is the acronym. It's in my paper. How do you can't just walk up and say, what do you think this would look like if it was two-dimensional? There's a whole process of where you start, the steps. That's the composite figure and the nets, and it's a whole process. So what she was doing was one of the middle processes for teaching spatial reasoning, moving back and forth from 2D to 3D.
Because I've had loads of drawing training where I had to do realistic drawing, but I still can't look at an object and say, oh, that's the same as that one. And those are the tests that they give you. And I still can't do that. It's still like, I don't even know how.
Yep, it's a skill.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Shelley. Thank you for the research. Much appreciated. And so we have the ability to fund a couple research projects each year. We haven't always funded them because we haven't always received applications, right, Rebecca? So if you know anybody who's interested, or if you're interested, let us know.